Welcome to the Pet Business Hiring Podcast. I'm your host, Doug the Dog Guy, and today we are joined by some very special guests. We have Collin and Meghan Funkhouser. They're the owners and founders of Funky Bunch Pet Care in Springfield, Missouri, but you guys know them as the voice and the brains behind Pet Sitter Confessional, everyone's favorite podcast. Collin and Meghan, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
I'm super excited to be here, Doug. Thank you.
It's so strange to be on the other side of the mic. You know, I've had the privilege and the opportunity to be on your podcast a couple times where you're interviewing me. So now to get to flip the script a little bit, I feel kind of strange and I'm feeling the pressure right now.
No pressure at all.
No, just maybe no non-Euclidean geometry that this interview. If we could do that the next time, I'd appreciate that so I can study up on it.
No promises. Everyone knows who y'all are. I mean, you have the biggest pet sitting podcast. You lead one of my favorite Facebook groups, Sitter Confessionals. Collin, you MC many of the conferences now. I mean, y'all are everywhere. You are probably the face of the pet sitting industry at this point.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. Yeah, we have been doing this a while. We've been podcasting for 6 years and been bringing on other people and talking to them and hearing their stories. So we've seen a lot over the last 6 years.
We have, and we've been very, very fortunate and blessed to have the reception that we have as well. People tuning in and listening and wanting to come on the podcast and share their story, and that's kind of what it's all about and why we do that.
Yeah, y'all are such an inspiration to me, and I know to so many people in the industry, and this podcast would not exist without you guys and your podcast. I mean, you really paved the road and showed me and other people that doing things like this is possible. So I just want to start with saying thank you so much for showing me what's possible in the world.
Well, that means a lot, Doug, and we love seeing everything that you are doing and working on, and are really happy to be a part of everything that you've got going on too.
Well, thank you so much. Today, I want to talk about how you have built your team at Funky Bunch Pet Care, and I really want to know about how your hiring process has evolved and changed over the years. But before we get into that, take us back to 2012 when you launched Funky Bunch Pet Care. What led you to wanting to become pet sitters and dog walkers?
It was Megan's fault.
It was. Well, we've been married 6 months, and we were taking a Dave Ramsey class, his Financial Peace University class, and he talked about ways to make extra money. And so I think I just Googled ways to earn money, and dog walking had popped up, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting thing. Let's try that. Collin had done the same thing because we were tag teaming of, well, what's my idea? What's his idea? And his idea was an aquarium cleaning business.
Yeah, because
Nice.
I had worked as an aquarist at Bass Pro Shops, diving the tanks, feeding the fish, taking care of all that stuff. But in where we were living in Lubbock, Texas, that didn't really pan out. And so Megan, not going to say which one won, but we don't run an aquarium business. So yeah, we started because we were in graduate school needing to earn extra money and something that was flexible around our research and our school schedule. And it really took off for us very quickly out there, given how we operated.
Wow. So y'all were in graduate school and you were trying to pay off debt and with the Dave Ramsey class, and that's how you got into pet care?
Yeah. I mean, graduate school doesn't pay a lot of money. And
Turns
so we were needing to supplement. And yeah, we just started pet sitting and we've just never stopped 14 years later.
Yeah, we started out, it was just Megan and I from the first several years. And in Lubbock at Texas Tech, we kind of had the city divided in half. Megan, and we only had one car at the time. So Megan would take the east side of town because that was closest to where you needed to be. And I rode around my bike doing everything on the west side of town. And we were doing mostly house sitting
Overnights.
and overnights at that time. So there was many times where we just were kind of living in different houses throughout the city and would kind of meet up every now and then to restock on groceries and take care of our own dog at the time too. It was looking back, I don't think I even appreciated just how busy and insane we were during that time in our lives.
But it really taught us a lot of skills because we would sit down every week and we would outline, exactly. This was before we had software. We would say, okay, you're going to do this, these clients. I'm going to do these clients.
Yeah.
And we mix and matched based off of our other life of graduate school and where we needed to be for that. And so it really taught us a lot about organization and route planning. We did a lot of that because, we only had one car. I had the car, he was on his bike, and he was just biking from house to house all over the city of Lubbock. And thankfully, it didn't get very cold down there in the winter and hardly ever snowed. So a bike was fine.
Yep. And you talk about those skills of just like teamwork, working together, as well as communicating with clients and really learning those intro to business skills of conversations about what we do, how we do it, around pricing, all of that stuff too, because we were in graduate school for science. So Meghan has a master's in environmental toxicology. Mine is in natural resource management. The running joke in our marriage is she kills things. I try and keep them alive. Don't tell that joke to pet owners, though. That's not not a good joke. So we weren't into business, and it wasn't something that we'd ever thought we would do. This was just we thought for a time we're going to go and do research and be professors at universities. And so all these skills, though, we were picking up along the way that we can really point back to and go, that was the origin of this policy that we have now. And that's why we do this, right? It's now 14 years old because of lessons we learned way back then.
Wow. Those are really important lessons to learn in the beginning. I started my business when I was a full-time college student as well. And I went from overnight to overnight to overnight, never spending a night in my actual apartment. So I can relate with some of the craziness there. At what point did you move from Texas to Missouri, and why did you continue pet sitting when you made that move?
So we continued pet sitting after that move because it was just something that we had known, that we just kept doing. He was working for the Missouri Department of Conservation, and I was at home raising our kids, and we just thought this is something that we can continue to do on nights and weekends. But then it really came to, well, we need this to be more than just Collin and I, because we do have these young kids now. We can't be toting them all over the city during the middle of the day, and we need to be more home with them. So we thought, well, the way that we do that is through a team and hiring.
Yeah. So we had moved from Lubbock to Dallas, Texas for more school. We had left everything behind in Lubbock, transitioned to Dallas, and started from scratch completely again, getting clients doing overnights, midday drop-ins, all that stuff. And then we moved back to Missouri, and that's where we had started to do kind of just a little bit here and there. And it was something that, like Meghan said, was, well, why wouldn't we continue to do this? Why? This is something that we know we can do. We'll just throw some stuff out on Facebook and get on Nextdoor, or Craigslist even was still kind of okay then, and go, well, we'll just do this a little bit. And the mix of services, was basically the same. We'd do some daycare in our home, but it was really more like, let's just try and figure out this new balance in our lives.
Wow. You led me right into my next question, Meghan. I was going to ask, when did you bring on your first team member, and why did you decide to? And it sounds like because you had kids at home, and having extra help would give you more time with your kids.
Yeah, definitely. And then also because of COVID, we realized quickly that this business relied on just Collin and I. And if something happens to us, well, then we need the business to be able to continue.
Yeah. So during COVID, and I always get my years mixed up of when we actually hired our first employees. Meghan has corrected me many times. In 2021 is when we knew we needed to hire. It was Christmas of 2021, actually, kind of getting towards the end, Christmas, Thanksgiving time. And I had COVID, and it was an insane day of like 20 visits. And I was just absolutely run ragged and exhausted. And we were going through all the safety procedures with our clients and notifying them, and they weren't going to be back for several days, and it was fine and all this stuff. And there was this client that I remember I came down, and we had to feed the dog in the basement because he was really old and had a walkout from the basement where he could get out, and he couldn't go upstairs or anything. But they had just moved in, and they were renovating the basement. And on the floor in this basement was just this mattress. And I remember it was like 4:00, and my next visit wasn't until like 8 or 9. And so I was like, okay. So I remember sitting down and then waking up over an hour later, realizing that I had just completely passed and crashed out on this random couch in this client's home. Was just realizing, like, I can't do all of this. I can't do all of the things that need to be done. And if I go, then really this is our business. This is our livelihood. Then there's nothing for the family. Then we have no way of providing for the family if something happens like this to me permanently. And so at that point is when we started to have this idea of, well, we really need to get at least a backup here of somebody who can step in periodically when we can't.
Wow. I think so many of us have this epiphany moment of maybe we don't have COVID and we're sleeping on a random mattress in a basement somewhere.
Don't recommend it.
Yeah, hopefully not many of us have that kind of epiphany, but I think a lot of us have a distinct moment where we knew we need help. We cannot continue go at this pace and in this way. Tell me what transpired from there. So you're on this random mattress in this basement. You say, I need help. What follows from there?
I think I can attribute a lot of what we did next because of the podcast.
Yeah.
By interviewing people and realizing that employees is the way to go. We have to do that from day one. We're not going to mess with independent contractors. It's too risky. We're not very risky people. We don't want to take that chance. And so we knew employees from the get-go.
Yep. Specifically, Kimotoni Tank, if we're being honest. Was
Yes.
ringing, it was screaming in our heads at this why that's important and the necessary, functions that you can provide and the security that provides for everything. And so I think it was kind of a throwing together this job ad and then figuring out like, what does this mean to interview? Like, how do you judge what's a good answer versus not? And I remember even in the early days, people would respond with something like, if you had a question that's like, what would you do in an emergency? Which is a really like broad question. Like we changed some of that, but like they'd say, well, I would reach out to my boss and follow company procedures. And I remember going, oh, okay. Oh, wait, I'm the boss. Oh gosh. Like, oh, right. So like some of that mindset stuff was really hard for us in the beginning. Cause again, not business people. We're just kind of running this thing. We're doing it. And for our first hire, it was really about like carving back out time for ourselves. Of really, honestly, it was, what's the time that I hate being out doing visits? When do I don't want to be doing that? And for us, it was the evenings, dinner time, so that we could be together as a family and I could put the kids to bed. Right? That's really the first time block that we hired for, was just, can somebody come out and do the evening visits when we need to so that I can be back home and we can be together as a family.
Yeah, that's how I recommend that everyone starts hiring, is picking that time frame that you don't want to do visits anymore and give that up first. I also love that you mentioned that your podcast was a source of education for yourselves. I know it's been such a source of education for me and for so many other people in the industry. And when I'm talking to people about if they should hire and how to get started hiring, always plug your starter pack of the hiring episodes. You guys have several starter packs. If you go to, what's the website? PetSitterConfessional.com? Yeah, go to PetSitterConfessional.com and go to the starter packs. And you guys have some just incredible episodes to help people get started with the hiring process.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you. It really was a lot of, hey, I've heard this person did this. What would that look like for us in our own business?
And not just copying to copy, but
Right.
actually thinking about, because we operate very differently than a lot of other businesses. So, and obviously in a market different than a lot of other businesses. So we had to tailor it specifically to what we know about us and our business and our community.
And also pulling from, we were hiring and we had at that time, like 9 years of doing this kind of under our belts, just Megan and I. So now we're going, well, this is how we've always done it. Does that make sense when I add in a second person or a third person or a fourth person? Is this still workable? And really like thinking through those, and we didn't obviously had it all outlined from the beginning and we were still changing stuff, but it was really just a lot of, like Megan said, going, hey, we heard that somebody talked about this on our podcast. We just interviewed them. And a lot of times it's like, we're asking questions because it's like, we kind of want to know this too, because we don't have an answer. And being able to take that and go, okay, so they're working it where they're paying hourly, and okay, so how would we do that in our business, and let's figure these things out so that it's customized to us. And also it was our impetus to then start deep diving into everyone's favorite topic of the labor laws of your state. Now, Doug, you're like, yes. Doesn't everyone
Yes.
love local labor laws? And realizing that we had to make a decision from the very beginning too. And one of our earlier decisions was actually like workers' compensation. In Missouri, there's a line where if you have under a certain number of employees, you don't have to provide it. And if you're over that, you do have to provide it. It's like, okay, well, legally, I'm following the law if I don't have it when I'm under this. Do you remember what the number is?
I think it's 5.
I think it's 5. Yeah, okay. That's what I'm going to say. So 5. Legally, if I'm under 5, I don't have to have this. But is it a best practice to not have it? Right? Like this,
Right.
all of a sudden, you're making these judgment calls of what's best practice for me versus what's legally required. And you quickly find out that the legal requirements is a bar that's really, really low. And for us, what made us a lot more uncomfortable, where it was like, well, we'll just go ahead and we'll just offer this from the beginning. Plus, decisions like that have helped us when we adopt best practices as early as possible in our business. What it does is not just our business, but other people too. Like it sets you up to maintain those and sustain those for the long run versus trying to adapt them to a business that wasn't built for them. And so always now we've got this mindset of like, what do I need to be doing now that will kind of, set me up for more success in the future than just trying to slap it on the side and say, go for it.
Well, and that also comes to with Pet Sitters International. They just released their industry standards a couple months ago.
Right.
And we worked through that and we're like, oh, we're hitting like 98, 99% of these. And that's because we have always said from the get-go, we're going to do things the best way we can. Not the cheapest, that's for sure. Not the cheapest way, but we're going to do things at a level that we want for our own dog.
And from a business perspective, that helps you build in the pricing and the margins early so that you don't find yourself going, cool, my expenses are 114% of what I bring in. It helps you maintain from the very beginning so you have that margin to do, expand, explore, change, grow, but you keep those healthy. And that's something that we've always been very conservative with when especially around labor and the price that is and the cost that incurs. Of we want to make sure, because one of the things we want is, okay, I want employees that are going to be around for 20 years. Wouldn't that be great? Well, how do I know what I can pay them if I don't have a runway here and I don't have room to grow and expand too?
What does it take to scale your pet care business? My name's Michelle Klein. I'm the founder of Dog Co Launch, where pet care companies come to grow and scale. And I want to send you a case study of how one of my clients took his monthly revenue in just 1 year from $17,000 to over $73,000. And yes, that is monthly revenue, not annual. To get this case study and to learn more about Dog Co and what we do and how we help companies, go to dogcolaunch.com/case study.
I think this says a lot about just how important it is to be proactive with researching what the norms are, what the standards are, and what the actual laws and regulations are, and then thinking ahead to make sure that you're not just meeting these minimum requirements, but really exceeding them and laying a path for the future of your business and your team. It sounds like y'all have really done a great job with that. And that's something that I did not do a good job with at all. I really did no research and was not proactive. So I really had to kind of reinvent my business several times along the way to be able to get my standards up to these minimum requirements. And just within the last couple of years, I've gotten to a point to where I'm able to be more proactive because I was playing catch up so much the first few years. And I just love that y'all emphasized that the importance of doing the research and being proactive across the board on all these different types of things.
Well,
yeah, I think it's important to give yourself grace too.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't know any of this until we started the podcast. When we started in 2012, we were just little babies running around taking care of pets, and we didn't know what we were actually doing. We were not being wise with our choices there. Sure, we were doing the organizing and the route planning, but we didn't know what the word professional really meant. And so we now, because of conversations with you and other pet sitters around the country and around the world, but there is a better way to do it. And so that was really the impetus and the get-go from where we started.
And some of it too came from, we started dog walking pet sitting in Lubbock from scratch and grew it to a very sizable business with just Megan and I. And then we left all that behind and moved to the Dallas, Arlington, Texas area and grew a sizable business with just Megan and I that was really healthy. And then we left it all behind. And part of the processes and early thought, kind of our mindset in the beginning was, I never want to do that again. I never want to just grow something and then have it disappear overnight. Because we think about, again, we don't want to live too far in the past and live there too long, but we look at going, man, could you imagine
if we had kept that business from Lubbock with employees running it right now?
14 years on and all this stuff and had, could you? And so going, if I never want that to happen, what do I need to do now to make sure that it doesn't? And that does mean, digging into this stuff. And like Megan said, giving yourself grace too, because you don't know what's coming down the line. Labor laws change all the time. And all of a sudden you're kind of left going, oh, okay, that's what we're doing now. And that's the expectation. And this is, minimum wages increasing. And we want to make sure that we're paying our employees really, really well. But that money has to come from somewhere. And knowing that now I've got to make that judgment call of I want to take care of people, but also business best practices and finances dictate that I need to, again, pull back a little bit here to make sure that there's enough to go around. And those are the discussions that as we've matured and as we've been doing this year after year have really been that's where our discussions are a lot more these days of balancing these two sides of ourselves.
Yeah. Speaking of that evolution of yourself and your business practices, tell me how your hiring process has evolved. What did it look like when you brought on that first team member after crashing on that mattress in that basement? And then what does it look like today?
Well, we did have a field manual and or an employee manual at the very beginning. And we sat down with the first employee after we had hired her, and we outlined exactly what was expected of her. And then a week later, she said, "This is not for me. Thank you. Goodbye."
So our very first employee, make sure everybody caught this.
She never actually did a visit.
Never did a single walk. Our very first hire quit after we sat down and went through the employee manual and expectations. And that was really eye-opening because what she said out the door was, I really feel like this should have been covered earlier. And part of this was Megan and I going, right. You'd probably like to know what the performance is and what it means to show up on time and all these things. And I think we were so focused on we want to find the best person and we want to make sure that we like them and that they love pets and all this stuff and it fits with
and
their
they're
schedule.
Available
Right.
was really the biggest thing.
Yeah, let's work with this stuff instead of us being bold in our practices as a business and being unapologetic about what we wanted and what we were expecting to do. That is one of the things that we very quickly flipped of, I don't want to shy away from anything. And you'd think that after, at that point, 9-10 years in business, being bold and upfront with our clients about our pricing and our cancellation policies and our procedures and our booking requirements and all this stuff, you'd think we would have had a little bit of muscle there of I can apply this to my employees. But it was not. It was non-existent. We pulled our punch about talking about the job and setting these expectations. And even so much as one of the things I've realized that we've changed a lot is the education about the industry as much as the education about our business, because it's it's relatively new for dog walking and pet sitting businesses to have intensive hiring processes and to be going through this stuff. So the same person who's applying to be, to work at McDonald's or a greeter somewhere or a front end desk person or, a mechanic or what, you kind of know what those industries are like as an employee. And so Meghan and I taking the time to put ourselves in the position of an employee who's never heard of anything about pet sitting and dog walking, who doesn't know how do I frame and phrase things to them? And that's a lot of the language changes that we've done over time too.
I think that's so important. And that's something that I've added to my interview process just with over the last couple of years of really talking about what it means to be a professional pet sitter and what that looks like as an industry. Like you said, not just focusing on my own business, because it is so new for pet sitting businesses to have intensive hiring practices. Like you said, I have a lot of people that they'll read my job ad, they'll get the emails with more information about the position after they apply. We go through the Zoom interview. They make it as far as the in-person interview, and then they say, I expected this to be more like Rover, or I expected this to be more like Wag. I'm like, okay, no. That's not how this works. Here's what it means to be a professional and to have a privately owned business doing this on a professional level. And so just moving that from that last in-person interview, move that on up to the first emails and that Zoom interview. It saves you and saves the applicant a lot of time and energy and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of applicants who are doing DoorDash or Uber and that stuff too. And they're like, I've got a flexible schedule. This is what I do. I can pick and choose. I'd like to do this as well. And at first, Meghan and I were like, these people are perfect. Look,
they're available.
They're available. They can just not do it over XYZ. But what we quickly realized is the reason they were doing Uber, the reason they were doing DoorDash is because they wanted to pick and choose and control their schedule. And we come in and going, no, I put you on at 2:00. You have to be there at 2:00. And they're like, oh, no, I didn't want to. I'm busy. What? So that's a lot of that stuff too, of like, I'm going to, we never assume and just blatantly move in a different direction, right? We're always going to address that to somebody. We're always going to bring that to their attention and have that conversation. Simple things like the variability of busyness for pet sitting businesses, right? Like, hey, we're going to be slammed busy, basically October through December. And then January and February, I'm not going to have a lot of work. And it's not because I don't like you. And it's not because I'm being mean or I'm pulling stuff from you. I literally have no hours to give because nobody's traveling. It's that kind of education to people because that's not what they expect. If they expect, I'll get paid for this full time, because you would if you're working at a fast food counter at another business, you get paid hourly when you're sitting there, whether a customer comes through the door or not. And how do you communicate that effectively to people? Again, that's how we have chosen to operate, of kind of more of a availability based scheduling. Again, see aforementioned discussion about check your local labor laws about what you can and can't do and what quote on call means, end quote, and all that stuff. But no matter how you choose to operate, you have to recognize that we thought deeply about every single one of these decisions. And the person applying is just like, oh, I want to play with dogs.
Or they're clicking buttons, checking boxes to say, yes, I've applied to 8 jobs this week. But yeah, we expect excellence at every visit. And so somebody coming in, they don't understand what that means. So we've had to front load all of that information and basically kind of talk them out of taking the job of, no, this is hard. You're going to experience a lot of different things. A lot of emotions may come up when you see a geriatric pet and who's not really moving, but is, we still need to care for it. Or there's, obvious messes on the floor that we need to clean up because we don't want the client coming home to that. Or a big one we've dealt with is weather. Yes, you will be walking the dog when it rains. Yes, you will be walking the dog when it's 30 degrees outside because they live in an apartment and there's no other option. They have to go outside.
Yeah. Or they'll, I'm comfortable driving in all weather conditions except when there's snow and ice. And we go, hey, guess when we do a lot of visits and guess what's required of you to get out? When there's snow and ice.
Now, if you live in Florida, probably not very much snow and ice, but here in Missouri, there is.
No, Florida, you just have to worry about iguanas falling from the sky whenever it gets cold and running around with a helmet on. So, yeah.
Iguanas and hurricanes. What could go wrong?
Yeah, it's fine. Right. But it's those kind of discussions too of, no, like you said, Doug, what's the expectation for the professional? We show up, right? We do this and we're going to be communicating in all of these various aspects. And when people say, I applied to this because I did this in middle school and I've got some free time now that I'm at college. Okay, like we've got to just,
There's a lot of education that needs to be done here.
Define your terms. Always define your terms, because even if somebody's like, oh, I used to pet sit, and you're like, great, I pet sit. Those two things mean very, very different things to a lot of people, and you have to be careful about them.
Yeah, you have to be so careful about that. And Megan, I love that you mentioned that you are almost trying to talk them out of the job. That is really the mindset that I bring into that first Zoom interview. Is I go into the Zoom interview really wanting to lay out exactly what the realities are going to be. You will be walking in the rain, and you'll be walking when it's 105 degrees outside in the summer or when it's freezing in the winter, and you're going to sit in traffic between visits and all of these things, and just making sure that they know exactly what they are getting into as early on in the process is going to save you, and it's going to save them in the long run. And I would love for you to kind of walk me through what your current hiring process looks like. Let's say you need a dog walker. I'm moving to Missouri. I want to work as a dog walker. What are the steps?
This is all you. I come in later in the conversation.
Somebody submits an application, and then we send them a second
Where do they
script
submit that application? Where do they see the job ad, and where do they submit the application?
So we use Indeed, and we also have an application on our website. So they can submit either of those ways. And then we review that and we send them a second script with some additional information, kind of again, talking them out of the job, of the realities. This is what it's going to be like. And then they have to either say yes or no to that.
Basically, we ask them, is this something that you are still interested in? After we vomit on them about, yes, it means you'd start at 6 a.m. in the morning, or it could go till 10 p.m. at night, or it means weather, it means this, it means driving, it means this. Are you okay with this? And then once they affirm that and say yes, we send them on to the next step.
So we send them a bunch of questions about their availability and just kind of more about them and what the jobs that they've done previously, and kind of what their expectations are for this job. And then if they pass that muster, I guess, then we send them on to a phone interview.
Yep. And then that's usually Megan and I intense conversations about everything here. And then we've got a phone interview. And early on, my phone interviews were anywhere from like 15 minutes to like 45 minutes long, because I'm a talker, right? And I want to just, oh, we're doing this and we're doing that, and everyone's having a fun time because that's what I do. But now it's like, it has to be 20 minutes or less. And really, I want it at 15 because I don't want to yes and too much. I need a yes and when appropriate. And what I mean by that is when they say a phrase, I don't always just want to chase all the little rabbit trails that they throw down. And so that by the end of the conversation, I know where they grew up and when they first, broke their leg and all this. I don't need that information, but I do need to clarify things. And so still having some time for that. And one thing that I always do with every single one of our interactions with our potential hires as they move through is my first question to them is, do you have any questions for me? Before I speak anything, I say, do you have any? I like getting those out of the way first, because that helps me set the tone for the rest of the conversation and gives me a lot of insight as to where they're coming from. And then we work through the questions, and they're everything from, how do you handle a busy day? Because we're looking for organizational things. We're looking for them having some structure, from semblance of able to put X, Y, Z in order. And during the written questions, we're looking at their writing style, right? We're looking at this stuff, personality. We end the phone interview, again, asking about availability. So we ask them about availability like 3, 4, 17 times. I don't know at this point. It's a lot.
Because we've had hires in the past where it changes. Every answer they give us, written, on the phone, in person, it's a different answer.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge red flag for us of, well, okay, which one is correct? Which one are you lying about?
And then at the end of the phone interview, something else that Megan and I try and do is early on, when we were moving from Dallas to Missouri, I was applying to a bunch of different jobs. And I applied to this one job and I never heard back from them. 3.5 years later, I got a rejection from that job. I want to say this again. 3.5 years later, I got a rejection letter from a job that I had applied to. And that level of communication and respect for people is something that we wanted to do better than. So throughout this entire process, we're always being clear on, hey, we need these answers to you by the X day by 5 p.m. And when I'm doing phone interviews or the Zoom/in person, I'm saying you will hear back from us no later than insert day and time, being very clear for them and how they're going to hear back from us. Because we want to respect that person. We know that they've probably put in 15, 20 different things, or maybe they're really excited about this. We want to let them know how that process works. So after the phone interview, then Megan and I, we look at their answers on the phone. Typically the way it works is I'm doing the phone interview and Megan has her computer pulled up looking at the Google Doc as I'm writing all the answers. And she's reviewing them in real time too. So we can get off the phone. Then I have this personal connection to the person. Megan has just the answers and stuff that I'm writing down. And so it gives her a little bit of distance to this and a little bit of clarity too about what is going on so that we can talk together about that. And that's been really beneficial to have one person who's not on and one person who's just looking at the responses so that you can compare and say, well, you seem really like you're really for this person because you were emotionally invested. And I am a little bit more distant and looking at this, a little bit more removed. That's very helpful. And then after we decide we used to do in-person interviews. And one thing about our business is we have 2 different service areas and they're over 2 hours apart from one another. And so I was driving 2 hours away to sit at a coffee shop, waiting, most of the time, sometimes getting ghosted, turning around and coming back home, or driving down there knowing I was doing this in-person interview with somebody who they weren't the best, but maybe they could pull it through on this one. Maybe the in-person they'd really shine, and then being disappointed. And so I love in-person interviews. And Megan and I were actually just talking about this the other day. I know for me personally, in-person interviews, I get more out of. But from a business operations perspective and from a business perspective, we have to do Zooms. When you're doing in-person, I loved watching how does that person walk into the room? Are they confident? When they order, how do they treat the person at the checkout counter? Are they kind to that person? Are they having conversations? In Zoom, you don't quite get those. However, it helps us move through our system and our process a lot faster. And we can still get 90% of what we need about that person and their answers. And also it has the added benefit of as much as we are a dog walking and pet sitting company, we use a lot of technology. And so we need to figure this out early on, which helps us process things. So now we do the Zoom, and those are typically 45 minutes long, depending on the person. Again, this is a lot of, and throughout too, when I'm asking questions about what they would do in situations and scenarios and things like that, I'm also giving them a little bit of behind the scenes look about us and what we do. And why did I ask you this question? I'll let them answer first, and then I'll give a little bit of history behind that. Again, trying to give them more context and more insights to what they may encounter and how things are actually going to operate once they're an employee.
Wow. You threw a lot at us there that is just packed with so much value. Thank you for laying out your process here. I was just talking to Maris, who owns House of Paws Pet Care over in St. Louis, about how she has also cut out in-person interviews. I think this is so interesting, and I am still doing in-person interviews in my business, but I am in the process of moving out of state, and I'll be managing my business remotely. So I've got to figure out how to do this. So I'm looking at you and your model and Maris and her model with this, and I just love that you said, I get more out of the in-person interviews, but operationally, it just doesn't work. And I think that is a really important mindset for all of us to have as business owners with everything that we do. We get varying degrees of things out of different processes, but what is actually scalable and what is actually profitable and going to help us with our long-term goals? Sometimes those are the same solutions and sometimes they're not. And I think cutting out the in-person interviews and just doing the Zoom interviews is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, we just had to look at for ourselves, what is our goal? Well, it's more family time. Collin and I and our kids, we love that time. We want to protect that time. And so him driving 2 hours down, doing 1 or 2 in-persons, and then driving 2 hours back, that was almost an entire day just wasted in the car and him being gone. So that was not getting us closer to the goal. And you're right, that is exactly what we need to be asking with every decision that we make, especially with hiring. What are things that get us closer to the goal? A lot of times that is freedom of lifting ourselves more out of the business, not doing as many field visits. And so what gets us closer to that?
And there's a lot of other benefits that come with it too. Again, if I'm doing this in-person interview, I'm the one taking the notes. It's Megan's perception of how that interview does or does not go is 100% dependent on what I write down and what I remember to write down and how I write it down and how I phrase it. Well, turns out if it's over Zoom, well, you can record it, you can get a transcript, all sorts of stuff. Right now, all of a sudden, you've really got this power behind it. And also, it's like, well, now I've got recorded interviews. Now I can go back and watch them. What did I do wrong? What did I phrase differently? Am I being consistent from one thing to the next? And now I'm reviewing myself. And it builds us this internal system where I can get a lot better now because I have to go through the painstaking process of watching myself talk to somebody. And it helps me improve too and gives Megan, again, she can go back and watch it, and which helps her as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about with the transcription of the Zoom interviews, you can have that recording of when you're talking about their availability. And Megan, I was thinking about when you said that these answers vary so much. What they put on their application and then what they put in their email response, what they tell you in the first interview versus the second interview. Their availability oftentimes varies a good bit. Having this Zoom call recorded and having that description is just one more piece of the puzzle you have to play with, especially along those types of conversations.
Well, and we always make sure to say, when we say, are you available at this day and time for a Zoom interview? And they say yes or no, and we get it scheduled. Once I send them the link, I do say this will be recorded because we want full transparency here of
Right.
You can show up in your PJs, whatever you need to do, that, the interview starts before the interview, but I want the transparency of this is going to be recorded. And we've had some people not okay with that. And so they've just not shown up to the interview.
Yep.
That transparency is so important. And Collin, you getting this rejection letter 3.5 years later is wild. I can't even imagine that as a business owner to send somebody a rejection letter 3 years later, even 3 months later. Like that would give me so much anxiety to do that to a potential employee. And then to put yourself in the employee's shoes, in your shoes in this situation, it's just a bad system across the board. And I think transparency within our communication, within any walk of life, but especially in the hiring process, is so important. So I love that you're proactively being transparent with saying, hey, this Zoom call will be recorded, and this is some of the not so fun things that you will deal with as a pet sitter and dog walker. And I'm seeing that show up in a lot of what you do in your business and in your hiring process. And I think that's really great.
Thank you. Yeah, with the rejection letter, we definitely went, whew, okay, good. We can stop waiting around for that now.
Wow, I'm glad I didn't put my life on hold.
Right.
And because you have to realize that's some people do that. Not everybody, But if you may have somebody who's just like eagerly waiting to hear back or is trying to decide between A and B, and the more upfront that we can be is just kinder to them, right? To be clear is to be kind. And that's something we take in all that we do. And for Meghan and I, from just a practical standpoint, when I say I will let you know by Thursday the 15th by 5 p.m., Meghan and I have a ticking clock. Meghan and I have to find the time to talk about this now. Meghan and I have to battle it out to figure out if we're going to hire this person or not. Meghan and I are going to need to make that decision. So it also forces us to move forward in these things, because otherwise it's really easy to say, okay, I did the interview. Thank goodness. Now I need to focus on other stuff. And then all of a sudden you look up and it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. You went, oh yeah, the person. It just helps us stay focused and actually make these decisions that we need to.
To be clear is to be kind. I love that. I'm writing that in my notebook. I really love that. Y'all are always full of just great phrases and sayings. And speaking of that, I got the phrase hire for heart from you. You said that at the Florida Pet Services Summit, I think 2 years ago. And as soon as it came out of your mouth, I wrote it down in my notebook. And I think I told you after your session, I'm stealing that. And I did. I say it all the time now, but I want to give you the credit. And I want to ask you, what does that mean to you to hire for heart? And not only what does it mean, but maybe more importantly, how do you get to the bottom of where their heart is in the interview process?
Yeah, this is a big thing. This is one of the things that we changed and we grew into throughout this entire process. When we first started hiring employees, we looked for people with an extensive background in pet care who had done this before, worked for other companies, all this stuff. And what we realized was they just weren't a good fit for us. They could walk a dog, they could hold a leash, they could open a door, but they didn't work with Meghan and I. And so we started to develop what's our avatar as an employee. And I think a lot of people immediately think, well, I want to do, maybe a stay-at-home mom who has some time in the afternoon, who can come out and is just looking for a little bit of side money, and they live in my service area. That's great. What we start to layer on top of this was a couple other stuff. Primary importance is we want somebody who is confident in themselves, yet humble enough to ask questions. And what are those two things? Those are heart. That's character. We want to hire for the heart. We want to hire the heart. We want to train the skills. I can train anybody, and I tell you, anybody, to walk a dog. That is something that Meghan and I are really good at. I mean, the training process now that we've got lined out, I'm really, really happy with it, with the hours and hours of stuff and everything. I can do that. But if I don't have somebody who at a fundamental level doesn't come to me with questions
Or can't take correction.
Doesn't believe in passionate care, all of a sudden, everything else is completely wasted because I'm teaching skills to somebody who does not care. And that's a waste. And so when we look at our candidates that they come through, I'll just give you one example of kind of what this looks like. We say, one of the questions we ask is, tell me about your most recent job or even your current job and what you like most about it. I love this question because it gives us a lot of insight to, are they connecting with the core of the work that they're doing? We had somebody apply and she worked overnight loading for UPS at the airport. What she did is she took boxes off of the truck and put them onto a plane. And she said, I like doing my job really well because I know that there are people who are waiting for these packages that they ordered. And if I don't do my job well, they're not going to get what they want.
That's serving people.
Serving people. If you do interview a DoorDasher, right? One of the best answers we got. I take pride in being efficient and prompt with my work because when I do that, their food is still warm by the time I get to them, right? They hone in on what do they do to serve somebody well, and do they care about that? It's those moments that you can tease out through, it's not just one question. There's not just a gotcha question. I really wish there was. But it's a litany of things. Did they care enough to use punctuation? Did they care enough to not use ChatGPT to answer questions.
Did they care enough to not show up in their pajamas?
Right? Did they care enough to do these things? All of these aspects are things that you can gather to get a holistic picture of this person and start understanding who they really are. And once you and it's not 100% every time, but that's really what we focus on is this person, like it's really the why behind them applying and who they're going to be to work with, because we really realized through some early on hires that like when you are hiring somebody, you're hiring them and you're working with them and all their problems and all of the things that they bring and all that they are. It's a holistic thing. You don't just get to pick and choose the one sliver of, well, you are now a pet sitter person, so leave everything else behind. We want that nice big rounded picture.
It really is yin and yang. You can't have the positive without some of the negative, and you get it all when you hire someone. And I think you're so right that a lot of it is kind of reading between the lines. I love this question of what do you like about your current or most recent job? I think that's a great question, but you're right that there's not a one gotcha question. So much of this really is taking in all of the nuance that surrounds how quickly do they respond to your emails? Do they say thank you at all during the entire process? There's so many little things that go in. The punctuation, the grammar in their application, all of these things really do start to fit together to paint this picture of how much do they care and really where are their priorities. It's so important to pay attention to those small things when we're interviewing people.
And they're so easy to look over too. Because what I can get focused on is, well, they didn't answer the emergency pet question right. And they didn't say these 3 things that I wanted them to say about, an off-leash dog or whatever this is. Like they didn't say the things, but realizing, what do I have control over of that person once they come on board and become an employee of mine? Well, I'll train them how to handle the off-leash dog. And I'll train them in the emergency thing. But did they think, it's an entire process of you just going like, what is within my purview? What can I train? What can't I? And what work am I willing to put in with somebody?
Right. I'm never looking for the perfect answers on applications. It's like you said, we can train them on how to deal with the emergencies and how to perform the services and everything else. I'm looking for, did they put thought into this answer?
Yeah. And what we're seeing more and more is people copying our questions and throwing them into ChatGPT. And all of a sudden, it's the perfect answer. It's bait, but there's no personality, and I don't know the person behind that. And so all of a sudden, I can't make that judgment call because I had a computer, not a person.
Yeah, I'm in the process of hiring right now, and this hiring round is actually the first time I've ever gotten answers on my application that I knew without a doubt are from ChatGPT. And it's been I almost want to use the word heartbreaking. I don't know if it's quite that dramatic or not, but yeah. I mean, yesterday I was looking at an application and it was perfect availability. They lived in the right neighborhood. They had previous experience. I mean, yada, yada, yada. And then we get down to the short answer scenario-based questions, and it's just straight copy and pasted from ChatGPT. And I said, no, why?
Yeah.
It's tough.
I don't want to fault someone for utilizing their resources. Like, there's nothing wrong with going to ChatGPT when you need to and saying, hey, how do I deal with this situation? That's what it's there for. It is there to help us. But if anyone at home is listening and you're applying for jobs, please do not copy and paste directly from chat into the job application. We know, we can tell.
Yep.
Yeah. The big one, the square brackets. As soon as you see those, nobody uses those.
So true. Well, this has been such an incredible conversation. As we wrap up here, are there any other quick tips or tricks that you want to mention about how to hire and grow a team, or just any other words of wisdom you'd like to leave us with?
I think I'll come back to what I said earlier of just give yourself grace. You're not going to know everything from the gate. Even if you listen to a bunch of resources and podcasts and read books, there is an aspect of this where it's trial and lesson, I guess.
Error. You could say error.
Well,
It's fine.
Trial and error, and then learn
Yeah.
the lesson and then improve yourself. So there are lots of resources out there. Doug's podcast, just so many books on hiring, so many pet sitters who have done this before you. And so it is important to look to those resources, but also know you're going to have to fine tune this for yourself and just iterate on that process and get better.
Yeah. I'll just add that, sometimes you'll make that first hire, and I would really lean into that person, whoever they are. That person, and being upfront with them, like, hey, I've never done this before, and this is what I'd like to do. You'll get a lot of good feedback. And that kind of relationship and those conversations can really, really help you refine and get good at discerning and get good at writing questions for how you want to do. Like Meghan said, refine it for you, not just copy and paste it because somebody else did, right? It's this iterative process. And that's also the beauty of it, because the job pool of people and candidates never stays the same. They're constantly changing. They have different expectations. They have different needs. They have different backgrounds. They have different goals, and the economy is changing. So we are existing not in a bubble. And if we aren't going through that process, you miss out on that. And all of a sudden you're doing best practices from 15, 20 years ago, and it's not appropriate. And all of a sudden you're not getting people and you get frustrated. So take the time to get that feedback and keep trying.
That's so true. That's so true. Life and business is all about evolution. To me, that's exciting. That is so exciting. And I hope that's exciting to everyone listening at home. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today, Collin and Meghan. You have left us with so much incredible knowledge and wisdom and all of your years of experience. And just thank you for everything that you do for our industry as a whole. Like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I really view both of you as the face of the pet sitting and dog walking industry. And I am honored to be a part of an industry that you are the face of, because you do such a good job at it, and you make us all look good in the process. So thank you.
That's very kind of you.
Thank you, Doug. We're very honored to also just know you and count you as a good friend too. So always good getting to chat and talk with you.
Thank you. Tell everybody where they can learn more about you and get in touch with you.
So we have a website, petsitterconfessional.com. We also have a podcast. It's called Pet Sitter Confessional, and it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this right now.
Awesome. And don't forget your Facebook group, Sitter Confessionals, as well. That's also one of my favorite Facebook groups. I'll put all of your links down in the podcast description below so people can click straight through, go to your podcast, join your Facebook group, check out that hiring starter pack on the Pet Sitter Confessional website. And again, thank you so much. With that, my name's Doug the Dog Guy. That's Collin and Meghan Funkhouser, and we are reminding you to stay positive.